Okay. Just let me know if you do have questions. Just type them out or whatever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to discuss some more, kind of continue the January session on FRQ tips, and then I have a section I'm hoping that y'all can help me with a little bit. I mean, I can do it, talk to myself about it, but I think it would be more interesting if y'all help. So anyway, and then we'll actually work through another FRQ. Um, so when you take the FR or the AP exam, these are these verbs on the side. These are verbs they like to use, these action words, that they want you to, um, and usually they will bold them now, so those action words will be bolded. But the big thing that people struggle with is the difference between identify and then explain, discuss, or describe. Okay, so identify and list. List is kind of like identify. So identify and list, that's just basically like naming it. So like we've been doing ones with like soil tests or whatever. So if you said like a pH test and they said identify or list some soil tests, you could say pH test, salinity test, soil texture test, and that's all you have to write. And that would be identifying and listing. But then when they want you to describe or explain or discuss, they want you to talk about that. So like, um, describe a soil texture test. So you could say a pH test, and then you could talk about how the pH test will test the pH of the soil and tell you if it's too acidic or too basic, and then tell you what plants might, so you can make a recommendation of what plants would live in that area or something like that. So I said a little more than just pH test. Okay. If they want you to define something, they want you to give the definition for a word, and they want you to put it in a sentence. And basically, in all FRQs, technically, they're not supposed to give you points if you don't have it in sentences. So bulleted lists and things like that, they're really not supposed to give you points for. Some graders will, some won't. But if you want to make sure, like personally, if I was taking an AP exam and I was going to sit through that whole thing, I'd want to make sure that my answers were done in a way that I could that whoever was reading it, because they probably read hundreds of FRQs a day when they grade these, that mine was just like, okay, yep, and it was easy to grade because they're grading so many in a day. If your handwriting is hard to read, they're not going to spend 30 minutes trying to read your handwriting. They're not even going to spend 5, right? If they can't read it, you don't get points. Okay, and I talked to some AP graders today, and they actually say that they don't take away, they award points. So you just, they wouldn't give you a point for that if it's ambiguous or they can't really tell. They just don't give you that point. So it's important that your written response is as easy for them to grade as possible. You don't want to frustrate them, while you're grading it. Not necessarily saying that if you frustrate them or whatever, they're not going to give you points, but um, people are more generous when they're in a good mood, if we put it that way. And then, so these, I see these a lot in your discussion postings, not y'all in particular, but in general in the group, and then also in FRQs and lab reports and things like that. I see this a lot. These phrases are considered vague. They're totally vague. They like to say if a 5th grader could say it, then it's probably, not enough to earn AP credit, right? So if you say fertilizers can harm the environment, well, yeah, or burning fossil fuels will, is not eco-friendly or cause global warming and pollution. Well, yeah, but you need to tell me why. Instead of saying cause global warming, you would say like release greenhouse gases or something like that. Okay, so you need to be specific. You want an answer that's like, yeah, a college student could have wrote this or written this. You want something that you're not gonna get any points for if they say like an environmental problem or an environmental disadvantage. If you say bad for the environment, okay, how is it bad for the environment? If you see me If you write something like this, I'm going to write how. You need to be more specific. Okay, so let me see. I've got a couple pages of these because there's a lot of vague ways. These things, Mother Nature, human impact. I see this a lot, this make it illegal, especially like in discussion postings. Um, they'll say, it'll say like, make a solution for this problem, like the genetic testing of fish discussion or like salinization, and they'll say, make it illegal. Okay, well, how are you going to force that? What do you mean make it illegal, right? You're going to have some regulations in place, and they will be fined or whatever if they don't um, uh, not agree with the regulations, but if they don't, do what they're supposed to, I guess. Pollute the environment. I see this a lot. Pollute the air, water, soil. I see this a ton. In the salinization discussions, I see we'll just repair the damage. How? Okay, you see me do this a lot. I'll write how or tell me specifically how you're going to do that. Right? What is a specific solution to that, not just repair the damage? Okay, because they're going to want that on the AP exam, and I'm trying to like kind of pull it out of you and make sure that you know. And I mean, you probably do know, but I want to make sure that they know that you know, if that makes sense. Okay, so if you just say pollute the environment or causes global warming, and you're probably like, well, duh, it releases greenhouse gases like CO2 and causes global warming. Well, yeah, but they don't know that you know that. So you want to make it to where they know that you know. Sustainable. You need to say, how is the practice sustainable, right? You see how I keep saying how? So you can't just say like sustainable irrigation or sustainable farming practices. You need to say it's going to be sustainable because I'm going to use drip irrigation and that won't cause salinization. Okay, toxins. I see this a lot. I see in these FRQs and in other places where you guys are saying, release toxins into the soil or whatever. Well, tell me what these toxins are. Be specific. Okay. Impact, alter, change the habitat. Tell me how. Okay. Are you impacting the environment because are you cutting down trees? Right. Are you altering the flow of water? What are you doing? I see this like some mining questions I've seen people also just say mining changes the habitat. How? Right? Or this destroys the ecology. Okay, how does it destroy the ecology? Is it because you're losing links in the food chain? Is it because you're, you know, cutting down crucial trees that are needed? Or is it because you're losing the soil and you're losing that component so then nothing can grow and then that breaks down the food chain? What's going on? How are you destroying the environment? Be specific in your destruction. So these are some phrases that are considered weak on an AP exam and you might not earn any points. So this is the part where if you guys can help me, that would be great. I actually don't have like pre-made answers to these. I just have these weak sentences and then I thought we could come up with them together. So I don't want to put y'all on the spot or anything, but how could you make this acid deposition hurts forests? How could you make this sentence a little stronger? What might you want to say? And you guys can just type it. If you wanna say it, I can enable your microphones if you have microphones. But if you guys could type it, that would be excellent. Just kind of think up some ways to make this a little more a better sentence or a little more detailed. Okay, well, if you guys are still typing, hopefully you are. I'll try and maybe do one, and then maybe you guys can maybe help me with the second one, or anyway. So acid deposition, that's like acid rain hurts forest, right? So we could say acid causes the yellowing yellowing of plant leaves, which can reduce photosynthesis. And then you could even, if you wanted to, you could even go on and talk about how, you know, a reduction in photosynthesis will make plants grow slower or not as well. And then, you know, something like that, the forest won't be as, or something like that. But do you see how I was specific with that? I said, how does the acid deposition hurt the forest? Well, it causes the yellowing of leaves, right? That's how. That's our how. So, it's the same sentence, but the first sentence sounds like, you know, is one of those fifth grader could write a sentence, which I don't know if a fifth grader would say acid deposition, but where the second sentence, that's like a, yeah, I definitely deserve my college credit kind of sentence, you know. So let's try this next one. Runoff from farms can reduce water quality and harm the environment. Okay, when I see a question like this, I think how? How can it reduce water quality? How is that going to harm the environment? So how can runoff reduce water quality? What are some things that we've learned, even just this far, that can cause runoff to reduce water quality? Okay, well, if our runoff is lots of particles, right, or sediments, right, you can have that sedimentation, which reduces, which could reduce visibility, which could then reduce photosynthesis, right, for those plants that are growing in the bottom of the waterways. If your runoff is like nitrogen or phosphorus, right, it can cause algal blooms, which can result in eutrophication. You know, and then if you want to talk about how they harm the environment, right? The reduction in photosynthesis would make plants grow slower or not at all. And then eutrophication could reduce dissolved oxygen, which could then cause some problems for animals and plants trying to, or animals trying to live in that waterway, right? So if we wanted to change this, we could say runoff from farms. And then you could say causes, right? Causes algal blooms, resulting in eutrophication, which then reduces the dissolved oxygen, making it difficult for plants to live. Yeah, that's good. That's good. So basically, Savannah's saying this is talking about eutrophication, right? She's saying that farms are using the fertilizers to grow their plants. When this is added to the water or is runoff, then it enters the water and eventually produces these dead zones, right? That is a, you know, that's a sentence that says, I sound like a college student, right? I deserve college credit. Where the first one, runoff from farms can reduce water quality and harm the environment, immediately an AP grader is going to go, how? And you're going to lose your points. If there's a way for an AP grader to say how, then you're probably gonna lose points because that's like the first thing they say. So that's really good, Savannah. So let's try a couple more sentences and then we'll start our real FRQ. Okay, so let's try this one. The pollution from coal power plants causes a lot of environmental degradation. Okay, so the area where we're struggling with in this question is a lot of environmental degradation, right? What is that? Okay, or what is this pollution, right? So we need to elaborate in those two areas of the sentence, which is basically the meat of the sentence, right? So if you guys want to try and write a sentence, and then I'll try and kind of give you guys some hints. So when we discuss pollution, we'll want to talk about, you could talk about burning fossil fuels, the burning of the coal, or you could talk about the soot that's released, those kind of things. And then the environmental degradation, right? If you talk about burning coal, or burning a fossil fuel, which is a coal, you could talk about, so I'll call these 1 and 2. So if you're doing the burning coal, you could talk about how, it releases CO2 or greenhouse gases, which can cause global warming. And you can't stop there, right? A lot of people stop at cause global warming, but how? Why is global warming bad, right? You have to say releases greenhouse gases, which causes global warming, which can make the environment unsuitable. For the current occupants. Now let's see what Savannah wrote. The CO2 that's released from the production of energy in coal power plants causes global warming due to the CO2 being a greenhouse gas. Yes. This greenhouse gas contributes to the warming of the environment, which can lead to higher temperatures, which can harm animals and plants that only grow at certain temperatures. Perfect. Okay, so you see how she's completely taken this sentence from a fifth grader sentence to a I definitely earn my college credit sentence. Okay, that would be a perfect describe or explain sentence. If they said explain why coal power plants, how they can be negative on the environment, or explain the environmental effects of coal power plants, or describe, that would be a great sentence, right? Or that, I guess it's a couple sentences, but that phrasing would be perfect, right? You'd get your points for that, definitely. Okay. So that's kind of, do you see how we're making our sentences? We're adding some detail. Okay, and you might already know that pollution, obviously the pollution is the burning of the coal. It's dirty, right? Obviously, environmental degradation could be the release of those greenhouse gases, but the reader that is grading your test, they don't necessarily know that. They don't know that you know that. So they're trying to, they want to make sure that you earn those points, and you want to make sure that your sentences are like, yeah, I definitely deserve these points, I used to tell my face-to-face students, they would write these little cheap sentences like this, and I would tell them, it made me think of the Busta Rhymes song. I don't know if you guys have heard this before. There's a Busta Rhymes song called "Give Me Some More," and it made me think of that, like, tell me some more, to give me some more detail, that kind of thing. If you haven't heard the song, you can go listen to it and then be embarrassed that I know that song, because because it's kind of a silly song. But anyway, so let's try this garbage incinerator question. So garbage incinerators cause a lot of air pollution. Okay, a lot is already like this super vague phrase that people hate, and then you say air pollution. It's just a lot of air pollution. Like how, right? What is a garbage incinerator doing, right? It's burning. Okay, so then we can talk about burning trash, right? That's yucky. So it's not necessarily going to release greenhouse gases, but it's going to release just like air pollutants, right? That yucky stuff. I wouldn't use yucky, but it's going to release like air pollutants caught from burning trash, right? It's going to be smelly, right? It's going to cause like soot or particulates. Okay, so something like that. So you can say garbage incinerators, the burning of the trash in a garbage incinerator would cause would release pollutants or something like that, or would release particulates into the air, something like that. You've got that smoke, that kind of thing. So you could say, something like that. That's why that would be, that's being released into the environment. You could write something like that. So let me see if I can come up with something. This is kind of a weird sentence. Garbage release particulates to say will cause issues with humans breathing. Okay, and you could even say like health issues if you wanted. You could talk about asthmatics or something like that, breathing the particulates in or something like that. But then you're getting a little more detail, right? Basically, if your parents could answer the question, I guess there are some kids in our class whose parents work for the EPA, in which case it might not be a good sense. But like, if a normal parent could answer the question, your parent is not an environmental scientist, then maybe you're not detailed enough.